Hello violinists! My name is Clara Lee and I'm a violinist and violin teacher here in Cleveland, Ohio, as well as Toronto, Ontario. Especially during the pandemic, I've had a lot of beginners start that are adults. And the question that I get in the initial email is, I'm a 30-some-year-old, I am a 40-some-year-old. Sometimes I've had students in their 60s email saying, is it too late? And my answer always is, it's not too late depending on what your goals are. Starting the violin as an adult is no problem at all. I find that it's one of the most beautiful and rewarding ways to spend your after work hours learning a new skill. Violin as a hobby is such a culturally enriching experience and also personally challenging and rewarding that I find that beginning the violin as an adult is an intelligent way to spend your time. However, if your goals as an adult beginner is to become the next soloist, it's not going to happen. Unfortunately, the violin is something that professional violinists train from a very early age, 4 years old, 5 years old, usually latest 10 or 11 or so. 11 is a little bit late for professionals. So having a very realistic expectation is important. However, as a hobby, it is never too late to start as an adult. It's normal for students to want to know that their progress is on par with other students. But remember that it is all your personal journey. Some adult beginners are very keen and they do pick it up quite rapidly. Oftentimes quicker than a lot of little kids. Adults are actually more in touch with their bodies and are able to digest concepts more rapidly than children. However, some adults simply don't have a lot of time to devote to practice, and if you're not consistent with a very challenging instrument like the violin, progress can be stalled. So you have to factor in your own commitment level and take learning the violin at your own pace. Can I self-learn the violin? The violin is a very complex instrument and there are a lot of body alignment and technical issues that you are very unlikely to be able to fix on your own, which is why violin is something that you always apprentice and train for a very long period of time. For example, for myself, I started as a little kid, 6 years old or so, started with the violin and piano. And I studied under a private teacher and I still, with my doctorate degree, will occasionally play for other violinists to be able to catch things that I don't see in myself. So the violin is a lifelong journey and you are not going to go very far without a private teacher. How much should you practice? Well, I recommend 15 to half an hour for beginners on a daily basis to start. It's more important that you practice every day and getting the feeling of the violin on your body more acclimated, and each time that you place yourself on the instrument, cultivating that connection with the instrument, it's more important that you do that on a consistent basis for shorter periods of time than once a week before your lesson, cramming for 2 hours. Where should I get my violin? There are many violin shops that offer rentals, but I recommend just purchasing a beginner violin at a local violin shop. Beginner violins can range from $200 to $1,000, and you can try out different instruments. You should definitely try them out on yourself because each body will respond differently to each violin and different bows as well. So some violins will actually feel more comfortable on your body than the other instrument, and the sound between instruments is also different. And some students will prefer a slightly darker sound and some students will prefer a slightly brighter sound, and that is a personal preference. So you should definitely try them out in person. What should I prepare for my first lesson? Well, have a violin with you, and if you're a beginner, it's advised to start with some fingerboard tapes. So maybe have those ready and your teacher will help you put them on, and a rosin, a cloth so that you can keep your best friend, the violin, clean. In the older times when I was a child, I always had a physical metronome. But these days, I always recommend that students just get an app on their phone with the intonation app and metronome, because those are actually louder than the physical metronomes, and I tend to use them as well. As far as studies go, most likely you will start with Suzuki Book 1 if they're a Suzuki teacher. I'm not a Suzuki teacher. I grew up with the Indiana University String Academy program, but I do use Suzuki books in tandem with other scales and etudes. So there you go. Those are my answers to some of the common questions that I get for adult beginners. If you have any further questions, feel free to email me. And welcome to the violin world.